Have you ever wondered why laws between the U.S. government and the states can be different? Sometimes laws can even conflict. For example, the U.S. government outlaws all marijuana use while some states have legalized it. Some states recognize same-sex marriage while other states do not. All of these differences can be very confusing and cause people to question why the U.S. does not have one set of laws. The answer to that question is the U.S. political system is based on federalism. Federalism is the division of governing power between a national government and subnational governments. In the U.S., the federal government in Washington, D.C. is the national government, while the 50 separate state governments in their respective state capitals are the subnational governments. The federal government and the state governments are both sovereign. This is known as dual sovereignty. Sovereignty is having supreme governing power within a geographical territory. The U.S. government has the right to govern itself without interference from other countries, just as Ohio has the right to govern its affairs without Michigan getting involved. In the context of political science, there is another aspect of sovereignty to consider. It is the source from which government power emanates. In other words, where does a government get its authority to govern? In a democratic system, it is from the collective will of the people. This is known as popular sovereignty. The people agree to form a government and give that government power to make binding laws for society. The concept of popular sovereignty contends that ultimate power rests collectively with the people. Popular sovereignty is manifested in a constitution. The U.S. Constitution begins with the important phrase, "We the people," for a reason. Every state in the Union also has a constitution created by the citizens of the states. This helps explain why the U.S. has federalism. There is a national constitution and there are state constitutions. Furthermore, the U.S. Constitution recognizes state sovereignty in Article 4 by guaranteeing each state a republican form of government. The next question that arises is why have federalism if we know it can create confusing and conflicting laws? The answer to this question is a political one. The 13 states predated the U.S. government and were not willing to give up their sovereignty or power when they were debating a new government at the Constitutional Convention in 1787. Federalism was a precondition to the U.S. Constitution. Therefore, it was a political compromise between those delegates that wanted to strengthen the federal government and those delegates that wanted to protect states' rights. Neither side was willing to give up sovereignty, so they split it. This is known as dual sovereignty. Besides federalism, there are two other ways to organize a political system: unitary or confederacy. Unitary systems vest all power in a national government without reserving any power for the subnational government. This is essentially the arrangement Great Britain had with the American colonies. You can understand why the delegates at the 1787 Constitutional Convention were not interested in creating another unitary government. They had just fought a bloody war for their independence from a unitary government. The other system is known as a confederacy, where sovereignty resides with the subnational governments. This is the essence of the arrangement the states had under the Articles of Confederation, which was the first government for the United States. For various reasons, this arrangement proved unworkable, so this was not an option for the framers either. Federalism helped pave the way for the U.S. Constitution to be ratified. In 1789, the U.S. government began operating under federalism. From the outset, the states and national government jockeyed for power over the other. This was to be expected given federalism created two sovereign power centers in one political system. The evolution of federalism from state-centered to nation-centered is clearly evident over the long arc of American history. There are a lot of reasons that explain this process of nationalization. You have to look no further than the language of the U.S. Constitution, primarily the Supremacy Clause of Article 6 and the Necessary and Proper Clause of Article 1, Section 8. Combined, these two clauses give the national government a significant advantage over the states. States' rights advocates were given the 10th Amendment, also known as the Reservation Clause, as a concession. The 10th Amendment reserves any powers not enumerated or implied for the federal government in the U.S. Constitution for the states. This amendment has done little to stem the tide of power flowing to the national government, though. The U.S. Supreme Court is the final arbiter when conflicts arise between Washington, D.C. and the states. This gives the national government another advantage, given the Supreme Court is a political institution of the national government. As a result, it tends to view issues from a more national perspective than from a state perspective, and decides cases more often than not in favor of the federal government. Another point to consider when explaining nationalization is money. The federal government has more financial resources than any one state, and therefore can use its money to bribe or coerce the states to follow national policies. This is known as fiscal federalism. The states have grown dependent on federal dollars, and in the process ceded many of their policymaking powers to Washington, D.C. As you can see, federalism is a dynamic and evolving political arrangement between the United States government and the states. At times it has been a source of great conflict, while at other times a source of great strength for the American political system.